Where does hope dwell when the world grows dim, when the air itself seems to choke on ash and despair? In the tales of old, whispered by the elves beneath starlit boughs, there is a story of a gardener, a simple soul not born of kings or cloaked in glory, who carried a light no shadow could quench. His name was Samwise Gamgee, and in the blackened heart of Mordor, where the earth groaned under the weight of malice, he found something eternal. Not courage, though he had that in abundance. Not strength, though his heart was steadfast. It was hope, a quiet, unshakable hope that bloomed where no flower should grow. How did he find it? What ancient truth stirred in the soul of this hobbit, who walked where even heroes faltered? Let us journey into the myth, not to recount the tale as a scribe might, but to wander its paths, as pilgrims seeking the meaning woven into its threads. The world of Middle-earth is not merely a land of stone and stream, but a tapestry of meaning where every mountain, every blade of grass sings of something deeper. It is a world where the heart's quiet battles are as mighty as the clash of swords, where the smallest act of faith can shift the fates of nations. And in this world, Samwise the gardener stands as a figure not of triumph, but of endurance. His story begins not in the fires of Mount Doom, but in the green folds of the Shire, where the earth smells of life and the days pass in gentle rhythm. Yet even there, in the cradle of peace, a shadow looms, not the shadow of Sauron, not yet, but the shadow of the unknown, the fear that lies dormant in every heart, waiting for the moment it is called forth. What is fear, if not the whisper that we are too small, too frail for the burdens laid upon us in the Shire? Samwise knew fear, though he did not name it. It was in the way he tended his garden, coaxing life from the soil, as if to hold back the chaos of a world he could not control. It was in the quiet moments when the stars seemed too vast, too distant for a hobbit to comprehend. And it was in the call of adventure when Gandalf, that wanderer of ancient roads, spoke of a ring, a journey and a darkness that could swallow all he loved. Fear is not the absence of courage, but the weight that courage must bear, and Samwise, with his hands still stained with earth, felt that weight when he stepped beyond the boundaries of his home, following Frodo Baggins, his friend, his master, into a tale too great for either of them. The road from the Shire is a road into the unknown, and in Tolkien's world, the unknown is never merely a place, but a mirror. It reflects what lies within the doubts, the longings, the truths we carry, but cannot yet name. For Samwise, the road was a pilgrimage, though he did not know it then. He walked not for glory nor for wisdom, but for love. Love for Frodo, who bore the ring of power, a burden that gnawed at his soul like a living thing. Love for the Shire with its rolling hills and laughing streams, which he feared he might never see again. And love for something greater, something he could not yet articulate, a sense that the world, for all its shadows, was worth saving. This love was his first step toward hope, though he did not yet see it. It was a seed planted in the soil of his heart, waiting for the moment it would break through stone. As Samwise and Frodo ventured beyond the Shire, the world grew vast and perilous. The old forest whispered with ancient malice, its trees alive with memory and grudge. The Barrow Downs, shrouded in mist, held the chill of death, where the bones of forgotten kings stirred in restless sleep. And beyond, the world opened into plains and mountains, where the eyes of Sauron's servants sought the ring, and the air grew heavy with the promise of ruin. Yet in these early days, Samwise's heart was not yet tested by the full weight of despair. He was still a hobbit of the Shire, his thoughts turning to home, to the taste of bread and the warmth of a fire. But the road was teaching him slowly that home is not merely a place, but a truth, one that must be carried within, lest it be lost forever. Consider the ring itself, that small golden thing so heavy with malice. It is not merely an object, but a symbol of temptation, of the desire to control, to possess, to bend the world to one's will. For Frodo, the ring was a burden, a chain that grew tighter with every step. But for Samwise, who did not bear it, the ring was something else, a shadow cast over the one he loved. To watch Frodo suffer, to see his light dim, was a pain sharper than any wound. And yet Samwise did not turn away. He did not flee. This is the first mystery of his hope, that he chose to stay to bear witness to suffering when every instinct urged him to run. In the myths of Middle-earth, as in the myths of our own world, to stay is an act of faith. It is to say without words that the darkness is not the whole of the story. The journey took them to Rivendell, that hidden valley where the elves sang of starlight and sorrow. Here the Council of Elrond gathered, and the fate of the ring was decided. Frodo, small and weary, took upon himself the task of bearing the ring to Mordor, to cast it into the fires from whence it came, and Samwise, unbidden, declared that he would go with him. "I'm coming too, or neither of us is going," he said, his voice firm, though his heart quaked. This was no grand gesture, no hero's vow. It was the stubbornness of love, the refusal to let Frodo walk alone. And in that moment Samwise stepped into the myth, not as a warrior, but as a companion, a gardener whose strength lay not in his hands, but in his heart. Rivendell was a place of beauty, but also of loss. The elves, with their timeless grace, were fading, their songs tinged with the ache of departure. To linger in Rivendell was to feel the weight of a world passing away, of a light that could not be held. For Samwise, this was a new kind of fear, not the fear of danger, but of impermanence. What is a gardener to do in a world where even the fairest things wither? Yet it was here among the elves that Samwise glimpsed something eternal. In their songs, in their tales of Arendelle, the mariner who carried a star into the heavens, he heard of a light that endured beyond the shadows. It was not a light he could touch, but one he could carry like a memory of home. And so, when the Fellowship of the Ring set out from Rivendell, Samwise carried more than his pack. He carried a spark, faint but unyielding, that would guide him through the dark. The road grew harder now. The Fellowship, Frodo, Samwise, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Merry, and Pippin faced trials that tested their bond. The snows of Caradhras, cruel and unrelenting, drove them into the depths of Moria, where the earth itself seemed to mourn. In those dark halls where the dwarves once sang, the Fellowship met loss. Gandalf the Lightbearer fell to the Balrog, a shadow of flame and terror. His fall was a wound not only to the Fellowship but to the world. For Samwise, it was a lesson in silence, the silence of grief, of a world suddenly emptied of guidance. Yet even in Moria, amid the ruins of a fallen kingdom, Samwise did not falter. He clung to Frodo, to the task, to the stubborn belief that the road, however dark, led somewhere. What is legacy, if not the echo of those who have gone before in Moria? Samwise walked among the bones of dwarves, their dreams of glory turned to dust. In Lothlorien, where the Fellowship found refuge after their loss, he walked among the elves, whose beauty was a memory of a world that could not last. Lorien, with its golden trees and mirrored waters, was a place of healing, but also of revelation. Here Galadriel, the Lady of Light, looked into Samwise's heart and saw his steadfastness. She gave him a gift, a small box of earth from her orchard, blessed with the life of growing things. It was a humble gift fit for a gardener, but it carried a promise that life could be reborn even from ash. This was the second mystery of Samwise's hope, that he carried the earth itself, not as a burden, but as a trust. The Fellowship broke upon the banks of the Anduin, torn by Boromir's temptation and the weight of the ring. Frodo chose to go on alone, to spare his friends the shadow that clung to him, but Samwise would not be spared. He followed, plunging into the river, his heart fixed on Frodo's fading figure. "I made a promise, Mr. Frodo," a promise, he said, his voice breaking but unyielding. "Don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee." "And I don't mean to." This was no oath sworn in a hall of kings, but a vow born of the heart, a vow that bound him to Frodo, to the journey, to the hope that lay beyond the horizon. And so the two hobbits set out alone toward the shadowed land of Mordor, where the air was poison and the earth was fire. The Emyn Muil, with its jagged cliffs and endless mazes, was a place of desolation. Here Samwise's hope was tested not by danger but by silence. The silence of a world without song, without life, where even the stars seemed dim. Yet it was here in the bleakness that Samwise began to see. He saw Frodo's suffering the way the ring clawed at his soul. He saw the weight of the task, the impossibility of it. And he saw, too, the smallness of himself, a hobbit, no taller than a child in a world of giants and gods. Yet he did not turn back. He cooked meals when he could sang songs of the Shire, when the silence grew too heavy, and spoke of home when Frodo's eyes grew distant. These were not acts of heroism, but of defiance, a refusal to let the darkness have the last word. In the myths of Middle-earth, as in the myths of our own hearts, hope is not a feeling, but a choice. It is the choice to sing when the world is silent, to walk when the road is broken, to love when the shadow looms. Samwise in the Emyn Muil chose hope, though he did not name it. He chose it in the way he carried Frodo's pack, when it grew too heavy, in the way he watched the stars when Frodo slept, in the way he clung to the memory of the Shire, not as a dream, but as a truth. And in that choice the seed of hope planted long ago began to stir. The dead marshes awaited them, a place of rot and memory, where the faces of the fallen stared from the water, their eyes empty but unyielding. Here the weight of the past pressed upon Samwise, not his own past, but the past of the world, of wars and betrayals, of hopes drowned in blood. The marshes were a mirror reflecting the fear that all journeys end in loss. Yet even here Samwise found a light. It was not the light of the sun, nor of the stars, but of Frodo's resolve, faint but unbroken. To see Frodo rise each day, to see him take another step, was to see the possibility of endurance. And Samwise the gardener knew endurance. He knew the slow, patient work of tending life, of waiting for the sprout to break through stone. Gollum, that wretched creature, joined them in the marshes, bound by his own twisted longing for the ring. He was a shadow of what Frodo might become, a warning of the ring's power to corrupt. Yet Samwise, though he distrusted Gollum, did not hate him. He saw in Gollum's brokenness a reflection of the world's wound, a wound that could not be healed by anger, but only by pity. This was the third mystery of Samwise's hope, that he could look upon the fallen and still see the possibility of redemption, not for Gollum perhaps, but for Frodo, for the world, for the story itself. As they drew closer to Mordor, the air grew thick with ash, and the earth trembled with the fires of Mount Doom. The Black Gate loomed before them, a wall of iron and despair, impassable, unyielding. Here Samwise felt the full weight of the task, not as a hero, but as a witness. To stand before the gate was to stand before the end, to see the futility of their journey. Yet it was here, in the shadow of impossibility, that Samwise's hope began to take shape. It was not a hope for victory nor for survival, but for meaning. He began to understand in the silence of his heart that the journey was not about the ring alone, but about the love that carried them through it. The road turned now away from the gate toward the pass of Cirith Ungol, where the shadows were deeper and the air was a living thing, heavy with malice. Samwise, with Frodo at his side and Gollum slinking behind, walked into the dark, his heart a garden, where hope, still small, still fragile, began to grow. He did not know what lay ahead, only that he would walk it step by step for as long as Frodo needed him, and in that choice, in that quiet, unspoken faith, the myth of Samwise Gamgee began to sing a song not of triumph, but of endurance, of love, of a light that no shadow could quench. The pass of Cirith Ungol wound like a scar through the mountains, its stone sharp with malice, its air thick with the stench of decay. Samwise Gamgee, trudging behind Frodo, felt the world closing in, not merely the rock walls that loomed above, but the weight of a darkness that seemed to seep into the soul. The stars were hidden now, swallowed by clouds that churned like the breath of some ancient beast. Mordor lay beyond its fires, pulsing in the distance, a heartbeat of ruin. Yet Samwise walked on his eyes, fixed on Frodo's faltering steps, his heart tethered to a promise made in the green fields of the Shire. The journey had stripped away the comforts of home, the laughter of friends, the certainty of tomorrow. What remained was raw, unyielding, a thread of hope, thin as a whisper but unbroken. How does hope endure when the world itself seems to conspire against it? In the shadow of Cirith Ungol, Samwise began to learn the answer not in words, but in the quiet language of the heart. The path was treacherous, a labyrinth of stone and silence where every step felt like a defiance of the dark. Gollum led them, his eyes glinting with a hunger that Samwise could not trust. The creature was a riddle, a broken thing bound to the ring by a chain older than memory. To Samwise, Gollum was not merely a guide, but a mirror, a reflection of what the ring could do, of the fragility of the soul under temptation's weight. Frodo, bearing the ring, walked a knife's edge, his face pale, his eyes haunted by visions Samwise could not see. The ring was no longer a mere object, but a presence, a voice that whispered of power, of rest, of surrender. Samwise saw its work in Frodo's silences, in the way his hands trembled, in the way he seemed to shrink into himself, as if the world were too heavy to bear. And yet, Samwise did not turn away. He watched, he waited, he carried what he could. Frodo's pack, Frodo's hope, Frodo's story. What is burden, if not the weight of another's pain? In the myths of Middle-earth, as in the myths of our own lives, to carry a burden is to choose love over ease. Samwise, in his simplicity, understood this, though he did not name it. He cooked what little food they had, meager stews of herbs and roots, their taste a faint echo of the Shire. He spoke of home when the silence grew too deep, tales of the green dragon, of rosy Cotton's laugh, of the way the sun fell golden on the hills. These were not distractions, but anchors, threads that tied Frodo to the world he was slipping away from. And in these small acts Samwise wove a tapestry of resistance, not against Sauron's armies, but against the despair that gnawed at them both. The ring was a fire consuming all it touched, but Samwise's love was a river, quiet but unyielding, carving its path through stone. Cirith Ungol was not merely a place, but a trial. The mountains were alive with a malice older than the ring, a hatred that seeped from the earth itself. Shelob, the great spider, lurked in the tunnels, her webs a snare for the unwary, her hunger a shadow of Sauron's own. Gollum's betrayal, long suspected by Samwise, came here in the dark. He led them into the spider's lair, his heart twisted by the ring's call, hoping to claim it from Frodo's broken body. The betrayal was a wound not only to Frodo, but to Samwise's faith in the world. To trust is to risk, and Samwise had trusted, however warily, that Gollum might yet be redeemed. But the world is not always kind to trust, and in the tunnels of Toresh, Ungol, Samwise learned the cost of hope, not its end, but its price. Frodo fell to Shelob's sting, his body still, his face pale as death. Samwise, alone in the dark, faced a silence deeper than any he had known. It was not the silence of Moria, where Gandalf's fall had left a void, nor the silence of the dead marshes where the past whispered of loss. This was the silence of abandonment, of a world where the one he loved was gone. The ring hung around Frodo's neck, a glinting curse, and for a moment Samwise stood frozen, his heart a battlefield. Fear whispered that all was lost, that the journey was folly, that a hobbit Gemace could not stand against the dark. Temptation whispered too, not of power but of duty, that he, Samwise, must take the ring, must carry it to the fire, must finish what Frodo could not. But Samwise was no hero, no king. He was a gardener, and his heart spoke a different truth. He took the ring not to wield it, but to guard it, to keep it from Aunt Shelob's grasp, from Gollum's treachery, from the eyes of Mordor. The weight of it was a shock, a heaviness that pulled at his soul, whispering of dominion, of a world bent to his will. But Samwise, with his hands still calloused from the earth, resisted. He saw the ring for what it was, a lie, a shadow that promised everything and gave nothing. And in that moment he chose Frodo over the ring, love over power. He lifted Frodo's body, cradling it as one might cradle a child, and carried him from the tunnels, his steps slow but unyielding. This was the fourth mystery of Samwise's hope, that he could bear the unbearable, not for glory, but for the one he served. The orcs came, then drawn by the noise of struggle, their voices harsh, their blades glinting in the torchlight. They took Frodo, believing him dead, and bore him to the tower of Cirith Ungol. Samwise, hidden in the shadows, felt the world break. To lose Frodo was to lose the heart of the journey, the reason for every step. Yet even here, in the crucible of despair, Samwise did not falter. He followed, driven by a love that burned brighter than fear. The tower was a place of cruelty, its stones stained with suffering, its air thick with the cries of the lost. But Samwise, small and unseen, climbed its heights, his heart a song of defiance. He sang not of victory but of home, of the Shire of the stars, of a world worth saving. And in that song he found Frodo bound but alive, his eyes dim but unbroken. The reunion was not a triumph but a reckoning. Frodo, weakened by the ring, by Shelob's venom, by the weight of his task, was a shadow of the hobbit Samwise had known. Yet Samwise saw not the shadow, but the light of Frodo's resolve, of his refusal to surrender. He freed Frodo, returned the ring, and took his place once more at his side. The Tower of Cirith Ungol was a place of darkness, but it was also a place of revelation. Here Samwise understood that hope is not the absence of despair, but the courage to walk through it. He had faced the silence of loss, the temptation of power, the betrayal of trust, and he had emerged not unscathed, but whole. His hope was no longer a seed, but a flame, small but steady, lighting the way forward. They descended from the tower, stepping into the wastelands of Mordor. The land was a wound, its earth cracked and barren, its air choked with ash. The sky was a shroud, the sun a memory, and the fires of Mount Doom loomed ahead, a beacon of destruction. Here the journey became a pilgrimage, not to a place, but to a truth. Samwise, with Frodo at his side, walked through a world that seemed to deny the possibility of hope. Yet he carried it still, in the way he shared his water, in the way he spoke of the Shire, in the way he watched the horizon for a sign of light. The ring grew heavier now, its whispers louder, its pull, a tide that threatened to drown Frodo's soul. Samwise could not bear the ring, but he could bear Frodo. And in that act he became more than a companion. He became a bearer of light. What is faith, if not the belief that the story is not yet finished? In Mordor, Samwise's faith was not in victory nor in survival, but in meaning. He believed without proof that their journey mattered, that their suffering was not in vain. This faith was not a certainty but a choice to see the world not as it was, but as it could be. He saw it in the stars when they broke through the clouds, faint but eternal. He saw it in Frodo's eyes when they flickered with memory, with love, with the ghost of a smile. And he saw it in himself, in the stubbornness that kept him moving one step then another through a land that screamed of despair. The Gorgoroth plain stretched before them, a sea of ash and stone where the armies of Sauron marched, and the earth trembled with the weight of war. Samwise and Frodo, cloaked in orcish garb, moved like shadows, their bodies frail, their hearts heavy. Food was gone, water a memory, and the ring was a fire that burned without end. Yet Samwise, in the midst of this desolation, found a moment of grace. He spoke to Frodo of stories, of the tales they would tell, if they survived, of the way their journey would be remembered. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, he said, his voice soft but clear. They kept going because they were holding on to something, and Frodo, weary beyond words, asked, "What are we holding on to?" Samwise's answer was a revelation, not of answers, but of truth. That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. This was the fifth mystery of Samwise's hope, that he could see the good even in Mordor, even in the shadow of doom. It was not a good that could be touched, nor a good that promised victory, but a good that lived in the heart, in the love that bound him to Frodo, in the memory of the Shire, in the belief that the world, for all its wounds, was not yet lost. This good was a light, and Samwise carried it not as a hero, but as a gardener tending the flame of hope when all else was ash. The mountain drew closer now, its fires a call, its heat a weight that pressed against the soul. Frodo stumbled, his strength fading, his will eroded by the ring's endless hunger. Samwise, his own body worn to the bone, did what he had always done. He carried on. He lifted Frodo, bore him up the slopes, his steps a prayer, his heart a song. The world was fire and shadow, but Samwise was earth steady, unyielding, rooted in a truth that no flame could burn. And in that act, in that final climb, Samwise's hope became a myth, a story not of triumph, but of endurance, of a love that carried light into the dark. The slopes of Mount Doom rose like a wound in the earth, its jagged stones cutting into flesh, its air a furnace that seared the lungs. Samwise Gamgee, his body bent under Frodo's weight, climbed through a world reduced to ash and fire. The ring hanging from Frodo's neck was no longer a mere burden, but a living malice, its whispers a tide that drowned the soul. Frodo's steps faltered, his eyes hollow, his voice a threadbare echo of the hobbit who once laughed in the Shire. Yet Samwise, with hands cracked and bleeding, held him up, his heart a stubborn ember that refused to die. Mordor was not merely a place, but a crucible where hope was tested, not by the promise of victory, but by the silence of despair. How does one carry light when the world is flame? In the shadow of the mountain, Samwise's journey became a song not of triumph, but of fidelity, of a love that burned brighter than the fires around him. The path was no path at all, but a chaos of rock and soot, where each step was a battle against the earth itself. The sky above was a shroud choked with clouds that pulsed with the mountain's rage. The stars, those faint beacons of Samwise's hope, were gone, hidden by a darkness that seemed to swallow time itself. Frodo, consumed by the ring, moved as if in a dream, his body frail, his will fraying like a rope stretched too thin. Samwise saw the change, felt it in the way Frodo's weight leaned heavier, in the way his breaths came shallow and sharp. The ring was a thief, stealing not only strength but memory, joy, the very essence of who Frodo had been. And yet Samwise did not look away. He saw the wound, but he saw, too, the soul beneath it. A soul worth saving, worth carrying, worth loving. What is loss, if not the slow erosion of what we hold dear? In Mordor, loss was not a single moment, but a tide washing away the certainties of the past. Samwise felt it in the absence of the Shire, its green hills, now a dream so distant it seemed to belong to another life. He felt it in the silence of the fellowship, scattered or fallen, their voices no longer a shield against the dark. And he felt it most in Frodo, whose light was dimming, whose heart was slipping into shadow. Yet loss in the myths of Middle-earth is not the end of the story. It is a call to remembrance, to hold fast to what remains. Samwise, with his gardener's heart, knew this. He remembered the taste of apples, the laughter of children, the way the wind sang through the trees. These were not mere memories, but truths, anchors that tethered him to a world beyond the ash. The climb grew steeper, the air thicker, the heat a weight that pressed against the soul. Samwise's body screamed for rest, his throat burned for water, his eyes stung with the bite of sulfur. Yet he carried Frodo step by agonizing step, his arms trembling but unyielding. "I can't carry it for you, Mr. Frodo," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "but I can carry you." These words were no vow, no hero's boast, but a prayer born of love, of a promise made long ago in the Shire. To carry Frodo was to carry the journey itself, to bear the weight of a story that could not end in shadow. And in that act, Samwise became more than a companion. He became a pilgrim walking a path where every step was an offering, every breath a defiance of despair. The mountain was its tremors a growl, its fires a hunger that reached for the ring. Samwise felt its malice not as a thought, but as a pressure, a force that sought to crush the heart. The ring, so close to its birthplace, grew heavier, its voice louder, its pull a storm that battered Frodo's soul. Samwise saw the struggle, saw the way Frodo's hands clutched the ring as if it were both poison and salvation. Temptation was no longer a whisper, but a roar, promising power, promising rest, promising an end to pain. Yet Samwise, who had borne the ring for a moment in Cirith Ungol, knew its lie. He knew that its promises were chains, its rest a grave. And so he watched not with judgment, but with pity, his heart aching for the friend he could not save. What is temptation, if not the shadow of desire? In the myths of Middle-earth, temptation is not merely a choice, but a mirror, revealing the heart's deepest longings. For Frodo, the ring was a temptation to escape, to unmake the pain of the journey, to claim a power that could shield the world from harm. For Samwise, the temptation was subtler, not to wield the ring, but to abandon it, to turn back, to choose the ease of home over the agony of the climb. Yet Samwise resisted, not because he was strong, but because he was faithful. His desire was not for power nor for rest, but for Frodo, for the hobbit who had trusted him, who had borne the unbearable, who had walked into the dark for the sake of the world. This fidelity was the sixth mystery of Samwise's hope, that he could choose love over self even when the cost was everything. The Sammath Naur. The chambers of fire loomed ahead a gash. In the mountain where the ring was forged, the heat was a living thing clawing at skin-stealing breath, blurring sight. Samwise, with Frodo now stumbling at his side, entered the heart of the mountain where the world was flame and shadow. The ring's power was palpable, a pulse that shook the air, a voice that screamed of dominion. Frodo stood at the edge of the abyss, the fires below a mirror of the ring's hunger. Samwise, his heart pounding, waited, his hope a fragile thread stretched to breaking. This was the moment, the end of the journey, the chance to unmake the ring and shatter Sauron's will. Yet Frodo, his face twisted with anguish, did not cast the ring into the fire. "I have come," he said, his voice a stranger's, "but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. The ring is mine." The words were a wound deeper than any blade. Samwise stood frozen, his hope flickering, his heart grappling with the impossible. Frodo, the bearer, the friend, had fallen not to orcs, not to Shelob, but to the ring itself. The temptation had won, and the world hung in the balance. Yet even here, in the crucible of betrayal, Samwise did not despair. He saw Frodo's pain, saw the weight of the ring's lie, saw the soul still buried beneath the shadow, and he chose not to condemn, but to stay. This was the seventh mystery of Samwise's hope, that he could love even in the face of failure, even when the light seemed lost. His hope was not in Frodo's strength, nor in the ring's destruction, but in the truth that the story was not yet finished. Gollum, that wretched creature, emerged from the shadows, his eyes burning with the ring's call. His betrayal in Cirith Ungol had not sated his hunger, and now in the Sammath Naur he struck. He leapt upon Frodo, his hands clawing, his voice a shriek of desperation. Samwise, weary beyond measure, fought to protect Frodo, his body moving on instinct, his heart a flame that would not die. But Gollum's madness was a force driven by a longing that consumed all reason. He tore the ring from Frodo's finger, biting through flesh, claiming his precious at last. And then, in a moment that was both accident and fate, Gollum stumbled his joy, a fleeting spark, and fell into the fire. The ring was consumed, its power unmade, its voice silenced in the flames. The mountain roared its fury, shaking the earth, its fires surging as if to swallow the world. Samwise, with Frodo now broken and bleeding, fled the Sammath Nar, his arms around his friend, his heart a storm of grief and relief. The ring was gone, but the cost was etched in Frodo's eyes, in the blood on his hand, in the silence that hung between them. Mordor itself was unraveling its towers, crumbling its armies, scattering its sky, torn by the wrath of a power undone. Samwise and Frodo, small and frail, found refuge on a rock amid the chaos, the world around them a tempest of fire and stone. Here, in the ruin of all things, Samwise's hope faced its final test, not in the act of destruction, but in the silence that followed. What is silence, if not the space where meaning is born? In the myths of Middle-earth, silence is not an end, but a beginning, a moment where the heart speaks what words cannot. Samwise, sitting with Frodo on that lonely rock, felt the silence of a journey ended, of a burden lifted, of a world changed. He felt, too, the silence of loss of a Frodo, who would never be whole, of a Shire that might never feel like home. Yet in that silence, Samwise found a revelation. He looked at Frodo, his face worn but alive, and saw not failure but endurance. He looked at the sky, where the clouds were parting, and saw the stars faint but eternal. And he looked within at the hope that had carried him through fire and shadow, and saw that it was not his alone, but a gift, a light that belonged to the world. The eagles came then, Gwaihir and his kin, their wings a thunder in the sky. They bore Samwise and Frodo from the ruin of Mordor, carrying them to safety, to the fields of Ithilien, where the air was soft and the earth was green. The world was not yet healed, but it was free, its wounds open to the light. Samwise, lying beside Frodo, felt the weight of the journey lift, though its scars remained. He thought of the Shire, of the box of earth Galadriel had given him, of the life that might yet grow from ash. And he thought of hope not as a promise, but as a truth, a flame that burned in the heart, unquenched by fire, unbroken by shadow. The journey was not over, not truly. The Shire awaited with its own wounds, its own shadows. Frodo, marked by the ring, would carry its weight always, a wound that time could not erase. And Samwise the gardener would carry Frodo, not in body but in spirit, for as long as love endured. Yet in this moment, in the quiet of Ithilien, Samwise rested his hope, no longer a struggle but a song of stars, of earth, of a world worth fighting for. The myth of Samwise Gamgee was not a tale of heroes, but of pilgrims, of those who walk through darkness, not for glory, but for love. And in that love, in that quiet, unshakable hope, the story of Middle-earth found its heart. The fields of Ithilien lay soft under the morning light, their grasses whispering of life reborn, their streams catching the sun in fleeting glimmers. Samwise Gamgee, his body worn to a shadow of itself, sat beside Frodo, whose eyes carried a stillness that spoke of wounds too deep for healing. The air was clean free of Mordor's ash, but the weight of the journey lingered, a silent presence that clung to the soul. The ring was gone, consumed in the fires of Mount Doom, and with it Sauron's shadow had lifted, leaving a world raw and open like a wound caused by dawn. Yet Samwise, gazing at Frodo's pale face, felt no triumph. Only a quiet ache, a longing for the Shire, for the laughter of old days, for a wholeness that seemed to slip further with each breath. The journey had ended, but its echoes remained, and in those echoes Samwise sought the meaning of hope, not as a flame to wield, but as a seed to nurture in a world forever changed. Ithilien was a place of respite, a garden amid the ruins where the fellowship scattered by fate gathered once more. Aragorn, now a king in truth, bore the weight of a crown with a grace that hid his sorrow. Legolas and Gimli, bound by a friendship forged in battle, brought tales of distant lands, their voices a weave of mirth and memory. Merry and Pippin, grown taller in spirit, if not in stature, carried the light of the Shire in their laughter, though their eyes held the shadow of war. Gandalf, returned from death, was a presence both gentle and vast, his wisdom a beacon, his silence a comfort. They honored Frodo the ring-bearer, whose small hands had unmade a power that kings could not withstand. Yet Samwise, sitting quietly, saw the truth. Frodo's victory was no victory at all, but a sacrifice, a giving of himself that left him hollow, a vessel cracked by the weight it had borne. What is legacy, if not the shadow cast by what we leave behind? In the myths of Middle-earth, legacy is not a monument, but a story, a thread that binds the past to the future. Frodo's story was one of endurance of a hobbit who walked into the dark and returned, though not whole. Samwise's story was different, though no less vital. He was the gardener, the one who carried the earth, who tended the light when all seemed lost. In Ithilien, as the world turned toward healing, Samwise began to see his own legacy, not in the songs of bards, nor in the gratitude of kings, but in the quiet acts that had kept hope alive. He had carried Frodo, shared his bread, sung of home when the stars were gone. These were not deeds for epics, but roots deep and unseen that held the world together. The coronation of Aragorn in Minas Tirith was a moment of light, a restoration of order in a world long fractured. The White City gleamed its banners catching the wind, its people singing of a king returned. Samwise, standing among the hobbits, felt the weight of the moment, not as a participant, but as a witness. The world was vast, its fates shaped by powers beyond a hobbit's ken, yet he and Frodo had shifted its course. The ring was gone, the shadow lifted, and the earth was free to breathe again. Yet Samwise's heart turned not to the city, nor to the king, but to the Shire, to the green hills that called him home. He longed for the smell of earth, the taste of bread, the laughter of rosy cotton. But he saw, too, the shadow in Frodo's eyes, and knew that home for his friend was no longer a place, but a memory, a light forever out of reach. The journey back to the Shire was a pilgrimage not of danger, but of return. The roads were safer now, the air lighter, the world stirring with the promise of spring. Yet Samwise felt a tension, a pull between the joy of home and the sorrow of what had been lost. Frodo spoke little, his words soft, his silences deep. The ring had left its mark not in flesh, but in spirit, a wound that whispered of failure, of a moment in the Sammath Naur when he had claimed the ring, when he had fallen to its lie. Samwise, who had seen that moment, carried no judgment, only love. He remembered Frodo's courage, his sacrifice, the steps he had taken when hope was a ghost. And he remembered, too, his own choice to stay, to carry to hope when all seemed lost. This was the eighth mystery of Samwise's hope, that it could embrace the broken, the fallen, the ones who bore the scars of their choices. The Shire, when they reached it, was not the Shire they had left. Saruman, that fallen wizard, had brought his malice here, turning green fields to ash-felling trees, binding the hobbits in chains of fear. The scouring of the Shire, as it came to be called, was a battle not of swords alone, but of spirit. Samwise, with Merry Pippin and Frodo, rallied their people, their small hands wielding courage that belied their size. The hobbits rose, their ears, their hearts kindled by the memory of who they were, of laughter, of song, of a land that was theirs to tend. Saruman fell, his power broken, his bitterness a shadow that could not endure. Yet the victory was bittersweet, for the Shire bore scars, its beauty marred, its peace fractured. Samwise, walking among the ruins, felt the weight of a new task, not to destroy, but to rebuild, to plant, to heal. The box of earth from Galadriel, that small gift given in Lothlorien, became Samwise's tool of restoration. He scattered its blessed soil across the Shire, planting seeds, where trees had fallen, coaxing life from wounds. The earth answered, as earth does when tended with love. Saplings rose, their leaves catching the sun, their roots drinking deep. Flowers bloomed, their colors a defiance of the ash that had choked them. The Shire stirred its heart, beating once more, its laughter returning like a stream after drought. Samwise the gardener found joy in this work, his hands in the soil, his heart in the green. Yet he saw, too, the shadow that lingered in Frodo, whose hands no longer sought the earth, whose eyes looked west toward a horizon Samwise could not follow. What is healing if not the slow mending of what was torn? In the myths of Middle-earth, healing is not a return to what was, but a transformation, a new song woven from the threads of the old. The Shire could heal its wounds, softened by time, its beauty reborn. But Frodo, the ring-bearer, carried a wound that earth could not mend. The ring had taken too much its whispers, leaving a silence that no song could fill. Samwise, who had carried Frodo through fire, now carried him in quieter ways, through shared meals, through walks under starlight, through stories told by the fire. He married Rosie Cotton, their love, a light that warmed the heart, their children a promise of tomorrow. Yet he saw Frodo's distance, his longing for a peace that the Shire could not give. The Grey Havens called to Frodo, that western shore where the elves sailed into the undying lands, into a light beyond the world's reach. Gandalf, Galadriel, and Elrond prepared to depart. Their time in Middle-earth ended, their songs fading into memory. Frodo, too, would go his wound, a call to a place where healing might be found. Samwise, standing with Merry and Pippin, watched as Frodo made his choice, his heart breaking, his hope trembling. To lose Frodo was to lose a part of himself, the friend who had been his light, his burden, his reason for the journey. Yet Samwise did not cling, did not beg him to stay. He saw the truth in Frodo's eyes, a truth of release, of a journey that must end in parting. And in that moment, Samwise's hope became a surrender not to despair, but to love. This was the ninth mystery of his hope, that it could let go, could trust the story to continue even in absence. Frodo's farewell was a quiet thing, a moment of grace amid the ache. He spoke of love, of gratitude, of a world that Samwise would tend in his stead. He left the Red Book, the tale of their journey, in Samwise's hands, a legacy not of glory, but of truth. And then he sailed, his figure fading into the mist, his light joining the stars. Samwise stood on the shore, the sea a mirror of his grief, the wind a whisper of what might be. Merry and Pippin, their own hearts heavy, stood with him, their silence a bond that needed no words. The world was vast, its future unwritten, but Samwise felt the earth beneath his feet, the promise of home, the weight of a story that was now his to carry. He returned to the Shire, to Bag End, to Rosie and their children. The fire was warm, the table set, the laughter of little ones, a music that healed the heart. Yet Samwise, sitting by the hearth, felt the silence of Frodo's absence, the ache of a journey that would never truly end. He opened the Red Book, its pages a map of their trials, its words a bridge to the past. And he began to write, not to glorify, but to remember, to honor the light that had guided them, the hope that had endured. The Shire was green again, its wounds softened, its life a testament to the gardener's care. But Samwise's hope was no longer tied to the earth alone. It was a flame, a star, a truth that lived in the heart, in the love that had carried him through shadow, in the story that would sing long after he was gone. The myth of Samwise Gamgee is not a tale of endings, but of beginnings of a world made new, not by power, but by fidelity, by the small acts that weave the tapestry of time. In the Shire under the stars, Samwise lived his hope, a garden where love took root, where the past and future met in the quiet of a single breath. The journey was over, but the story was not. It lived in the earth, in the laughter, in the light that no shadow could quench. And Samwise the gardener, the pilgrim, the bearer of hope, walked on his heart, a song that echoed beyond the horizon into the eternal. The fire in Bag End crackled softly, its glow casting shadows that danced across the worn pages of the Red Book. Samwise Gamgee, his hands no longer young, sat in the quiet of evening, the laughter of his children a gentle hum beyond the door. The Shire stretched outside, green and whole its hills, cradling the memory of wounds healed by time and care. Yet Samwise's heart, though rooted in this earth, wandered still across the years through the fires of Mordor to the shores of the Grey Havens where Frodo had sailed into light. The journey was long past its trials woven into song, but its meaning lingered, a question that stirred in the silence. What is hope, if not the light we carry when the world forgets its name? In the twilight of his days, Samwise the gardener, the pilgrim, sought to understand not as a hero, but as a soul bound to a story that would never fade. The Shire was a living testament to Samwise's hands. The trees he had planted, blessed by Galadriel's gift, stood tall, their branches heavy with leaf and memory. The fields bloomed, their colors a defiance of the ash that once choked them. The hobbits laughed again, their lives a rhythm of planting and harvest, of feasts and tales by the fire. Samwise, now mayor, walked among them, his presence a comfort, his words a bridge between the past and the future. Yet he carried a weight unseen, a longing that grew sharper with the years. It was not for adventure nor for glory, but for Frodo, for the friend whose absence was a wound that time could not close. The Red Book, with its tales of shadow and light, was Samwise's tether to that loss, a map of a journey that had shaped the world. What is memory, if not the echo of what we cannot hold? In the myths of Middle-earth, memory is not a chain, but a thread weaving the heart to what was and what might be. Samwise's memories were vivid, etched in fire and starlight. He remembered the weight of Frodo in his arms, the heat of Mount Doom, the silence of the Sammath Nor, where the ring had claimed its final victory. He remembered the stars above the dead marshes, faint but unyielding, and the songs of the elves in Rivendell, their beauty a promise of eternity. And he remembered Frodo's eyes, dim with pain but alive with resolve, a light that no shadow could quench. These memories were not mere moments, but truths' roots that anchored Samwise's hope when the world grew heavy. The years passed, each one a season of growth and quiet joy. Samwise and Rosie raised their children. Eleanor, Frodo, Rose, and the others, each a spark of the Shire's future, each a reminder of the world they had fought for. Eleanor, golden-haired, like the flowers of Lothlorien, was Samwise's pride, her curiosity, a mirror of his own. He told her stories not of heroes, but of hobbits, of small hands that carried great burdens of love that endured when courage faltered. The Red Book grew under his pen, its pages a tapestry of their journey, a gift for those who would come after. Yet Samwise, writing by candlelight, felt a stirring, a call that was not of the Shire, but of the sea, of a light beyond the horizon where Frodo had gone. The Shire was not unchanged, though its scars were softened. The memory of Saruman's malice lingered in the older hobbits' eyes, in the tales told to warn the young. Samwise, as mayor, worked to preserve what was good, the laughter, the earth, the simple joys that made the Shire a home. He planted, he built, he listened his heart, a garden where hope took root. Yet he saw, too, the world beyond, where men and elves and dwarves shaped a new age. Aragorn's kingdom flourished, its white towers a beacon of order. Legolas and Gimli, ever wanderers, sent word of their travels, their friendship a bridge across realms. And Gandalf, though gone to the west, left a legacy of wisdom, a reminder that the world was vast, its story unfinished. What is time, if not the river that carries us from what was to what will be? In the myths of Middle-earth, time is not a thief, but a weaver binding the small to the great, the fleeting to the eternal. Samwise, growing old, felt time's touch in his bones, in the silver of his hair, in the quiet moments when the past seemed closer than the present. Yet he did not fear it. He had walked through fire, carried hope through shadow, and learned that time, like the earth, could be tended. He taught his children to love the Shire, to plant its fields, to sing its songs. He shared the Red Book not as a relic, but as a living thing, a story that belonged to all who heard it. And in these acts, Samwise's hope became a legacy not of stone, but of spirit, a light that would burn long after he was gone. The call of the sea grew stronger, a whisper that stirred in the silence of night. Samwise now, in his twilight, felt it as a longing not for escape, but for completion. Frodo had sailed to the undying lands, to a place of healing, of light beyond the world's pain. Samwise, who had carried him, who had shared his burden, felt the echo of that journey in his soul. The Red Book was finished, its tale complete, but Samwise's story was not. He remembered Galadriel's words in Lothlorien, her gift of earth, her gaze that saw the steadfastness of his heart. She had spoken of a time when he too might sail, when the world would release him to the light. And now, with the Shire green and his children grown, Samwise knew the moment had come. He spoke to Rosie, his love, whose laughter had been his home, whose strength had been his anchor. She saw the truth in his eyes, the call that could not be denied. Their parting was not a wound, but a grace, a love that trusted the journey's end. Samwise entrusted the Red Book to Elenor, its pages, a bridge to the past, a promise for the future. He walked the roads of the Shire one last time, his heart full of its beauty, its laughter, its life. The hills were green, the streams clear, the stars bright above. And then he turned west to the Grey Havens, where the sea waited its voice, a song of farewell and beginning. The havens were a place of quiet, their shores kissed by waves that whispered of eternity. Círdan the shipwright stood waiting, his eyes ancient, his presence a bridge to the light. Samwise, small and weathered, stepped onto the ship, his heart a garden where hope bloomed eternal. The sea stretched before him, vast and unknowable, its horizon a promise of reunion, of a light that no shadow could touch. He thought of Frodo, of the Red Book of the Shire that would live in his children's hands, and he thought of hope not as a flame to wield, but as a seed planted in the earth, carried in the heart, singing in the stars. What is hope, if not the truth? That the story endures. In the myths of Middle-earth, hope is not a victory, but a journey, a light that burns in the small, the broken, the faithful. Samwise, sailing west, carried that light not as a hero, but as a gardener, a pilgrim, a soul who had loved beyond the shadow. The ship moved through the waves, its sails catching the wind, its path a thread in the tapestry of time. The Shire faded, but its song remained a melody of earth and laughter of love that no sea could drown. And Samwise, with the stars above and the light ahead, sailed into the myth, his hope a flame that would never die. The undying lands, though unseen, were a presence, a warmth that grew as the ship drew near. Samwise felt it in his heart, a peace that was not an end, but a beginning. He imagined Frodo healed at last, his eyes bright with the light of the west. He imagined the elves, their songs a weave of starlight and sorrow, their wisdom a gift for the weary. And he imagined himself not as a stranger, but as a friend, a hobbit whose small hand had carried a world. The sea sang, the stars shone, and Samwise's hope, born in the Shire, tempered in Mordor, carried to the havens, became a truth eternal, a truth that the world, for all its shadows, was good and worth fighting for. The myth of Samwise Gamgee is not a tale of endings, but of echoes of a light that lives in the heart, in the earth, in the stories we tell. In the Shire his children grew, their hands tending the fields, their voices singing the songs he taught. The Red Book passed from Elenor to her kin, its pages a bridge across time, a reminder that hope is not a gift, but a choice. The world turned its seasons, a dance of loss and renewal, its people a chorus of small and great. And Samwise in the light of the west walked with Frodo their laughter, a melody that joined the stars. The journey was over, but the story was not. It lived in the earth, in the sea, in the love that carried light through shadow, in the hope that sang when all else was silent.